Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and I have on the line today Mr. Dave Kranzler from Investment Research Dynamics. And in this fireside chat, we cover a wide range of topics. This is part one, and without any further ado, here we go. I think that what's happening is that the citizens around the world are beginning to look at us differently as well. I really do, because at some point it has to be people around the world have to look at us and go, well, why are they not rioting? Why are they not upset? Why are they accepting of this criminality, this so blatant corruption? I mean, just look at the CIA documents that came out. My God, I mean, that was just.
I know, but here's the thing, Rory. I mean, I don't know if you saw it on Zero Hedge yesterday, but 59% of Americans polled said it was okay to use torture techniques if it means that it helps protect our country.
Yes, and I hope that they like that,
I
because
know, but it doesn't matter whether they like it or not. They agree with it. That's the
well,
thing. I was shocked when I saw that.
I hope that they understand that those techniques are going to soon be used on them.
But see, they don't. No one believes that that's possible. The problem is it's the people in charge of everything are taking advantage of the human condition and humans in general. And Nietzsche was the first one who put this idea into print. I don't know if it was his original philosophy, but I agree with him 100%. He has a master slave philosophy, not master slave in like the U.S. slavery sense, but in a euphemistic sense, in that the view is that 90% of humans prefer to be told what to do. It's the path of least resistance. It's the comfort zone. It gives you security. It makes you feel safe. And then you got 10% who are the masters, the leaders, and they prefer to lead. And they want to be the ones who are in control and tell everyone else what to do.
Okay.
That's why, yeah, it's great. Yeah, I mean, that's what the Nazis picked up on and capitalized on. That was the genius of Goebbels. And actually, they kind of migrated the idea from Stalin and Lenin. I mean, if you read about the history of the development of the Holocaust, most Germans did not believe. I mean, even though the concentration camps were happening and humans were being, put into ovens and gas showers, it was out in the country and no one wanted to believe it because they couldn't see it for their own eyes. And you got to realize it's a much different media environment back then than it is now. And in fact, the Jews themselves living in the big cities they wouldn't believe it. They wouldn't believe that their government is capable of doing something that horrific. And most of them didn't believe it until they could actually smell the burning flesh. So, and that, that's kind of what you see going on in this country. I mean, 60% of this country thinks it's okay to waterboard and do some of the other torture techniques that what we were doing to those prisoners isn't any different than what the Nazis were doing to the Jews.
No.
Because it was experimental techniques. It was basically, human cruelty. How far can we push these guys until, they die? How much pain and agony can someone withstand until they die? Well, and that's the concept. It's different methodologies.
In the article that I wrote recently, I compared it to what the Japanese were doing in World War II. I mean, because that was just
same exact thing. But I bet you we were doing the same thing to the Japanese or the Chinese that we were herding into concentration camps. Going back to the 1800s. But so anyway, my point is, you got 60% of the country is in agreement with the torture techniques. I mean, it's just, I was incredulous. I would have thought it would have been less than 10%. But it just confirms to me that it's easier to say, hey, I'm afraid of ISIS. I'm afraid of these terrorists. And if to protect my family, that's what we got to do to people, I'm all for it. It's the path of least resistance.
That's terrifying.
And that's, people may, recognize that the system's corrupt, the government's corrupt, But it's like, hey, as long as I don't cause trouble for myself and I just go about my business, then I can wake up every day and go to work and put food on the table for my family.
Or sit at
And
home and collect my food stamps and
sit at home and I mean, you got over 50% of this country is, in some way receiving government transfer payments. So, and that's why I think that's why these guys can get away with it. I mean, that's why, if you read I haven't read all of Mein Kampf, but you read certain passages of it and you can see, Hitler's like, hey, you tell a lie enough times, you just keep telling it until enough people believe it. It doesn't matter if not everyone believes it. You just need 51% of the country to believe it.
right.
And here you got 60% of the people believing this about the torture. That's a win. That's a huge win. Hitler only wanted 51%. We're getting 60%.
Jeez.
And so and it's the same thing. It's the same thing with Goebbels. He said, you what you got to do is you tell a lie you can get away with stuff that's so outrageous and so insanely inconceivable and lie about it, but it has to be really outside the bounds because you got to make it so that no one could believe that a government would be possible of doing something like that.
Yes.
I give you 911, for example.
Exactly. Make a lie so big that it becomes inconceivable for it to not be true.
Right. And we have it going on in small ways right now. I mean, look at the QE. The government's printed up $4 trillion, and it took the dollar down for a while, and now the dollar's back up. And hey, there's no inflation. What do you mean there's no inflation? Every time I go to the grocery store, everything I buy, my staples, it goes up 10 cents every time, and I go all the time.
Yep.
What do you mean there's no inflation? Great, I'm paying less at the gas pump, so there's no inflation. What about medical insurance? What about college for my kids? What about everything else?
Gas. I want to ask you about gas because there's been a lot of talk a few months ago as far as it blowing up the Russian economy because these guys got pissed off and these guys are the criminals that we're just talking about got really upset when China and Russia signed that massive Gazprom deal a few months ago, about 6 or 8 months ago. And now the Russian economy is blowing up to the point of the ruble is falling like a stone off a cliff. And that isn't that directly related to the cheap gas that we have in this country? And how does Saudi Arabia tie into this? Help me to understand this three-legged stool that's going on.
I may be completely off base on this, but first of all, I think, I haven't bought into the theories that the U.S. is behind plunging the price of oil with the help of the Saudis. You've had this, the theory that the Saudis stomped on the price of oil to wipe out the U.S. shale oil industry. No, because if our government, if the Federal Reserve and our government can control markets to the extent that we're willing to believe that they control them and that we know that they control them, then they would have been able to offset what the Saudis are doing.
Okay.
All right.
That makes sense.
If physical oil was being dumped on the market to push down the price, I guarantee you China and all the big Wall Street banks would have buying every ounce, every drop they could and storing it until the price went back up. That's not it wouldn't happen forever that they're dumping oil on the market to push the price down. And all these big investment banks, I'm amazed no one's even talked about it. But, about a year ago, it was announced that all these big investment banks bought oil terminals, to store oil. Okay. And we know China's been buying everything they can get. I mean, there was a report a couple months ago that they had bought extra freighters just to transport oil from the Middle East to China. Yeah, to me, the market would have counteracted that, unless everyone's in collusion, unless the U.S. is in collusion with China. Hey, let's let Saudi Arabia dump all this oil and push down the price and don't buy it. Well, I don't think the U.S. and China are in collusion, but who knows? I mean, I'd believe anything at this point if I could see evidence of it. Okay, and then the view that, oh well, the U.S. is going to annihilate the price of oil to punish Putin. Well, yeah, I mean I think that has a little more validity, but I mean, would the U.S. do that and risk plundering its own economy? I mean, it's not. First of all, you're going to wipe out, at least $1 trillion in capital if you wipe out the shale oil industry. You're going to wipe out a lot of investors. Um, and you're gonna cause irreparable damage to economies. You're already finally seeing articles that Houston's getting hammered. Houston real estate's getting hammered by this. I know it's affecting Denver real estate. Pennsylvania, it's going to affect that. California. In November, home sales in Southern California absolutely plunged. I've got an article about that on my blog.
Yep.
I think that the primary driver behind the collapse in the price of oil is the collapse in global economies.
Oh, okay. So
And it's a
nothing
supply
else.
demand thing. I mean, you've left supply the same. At least that's what we've been told. And demand's way down.
Can we see that the supply chains are the same?
Well, I guess the EIA or IEA, International Energy Association, whatever the letters stand for, they released oil inventories, I think yesterday, and they were on basically flat. So, but I don't know any official report. You can put a lot of stock in those, like
Right.
just like any other government agency report.
All lies.
But I mean, Saudi Arabia said they're not cutting production. All the OPEC countries said they're not cutting production. So if you assume they're not cutting production, then you got to say, oh well, the supply is basically the same.
Okay.
And I think the shale producers are still producing oil, even though they're selling it at a loss. So to me, to have the price collapse like this, it has to be supply and demand. I mean, to me, there's too many other factor, too many factors involved and too many competing parties with money that I think you can manipulate oil in a very short term, but it's been collapsing since early July. And when I say short term, yeah, maybe you can manipulate it for a month or two, but eventually smart money is going to say, hey, this is BS. They're going to go in there and buy it up, and we haven't seen that.
Okay.
So
well, I guess not. No.
And yeah, is it hurting? Is it hurting Russia's economy? Yeah, sure, of course it is. How badly is it hurting Russia's economy? How could we possibly know? I mean, we don't get accurate information from our government. What makes us think we're going to get accurate information about Russia from our government? What makes us think we're going to get accurate information about Russia from Russia? Who knows? I mean, I saw this report that Russia was selling gold on Monday.
Yes.
And I'm like, really? All right, well, let me ask you this. First of all, why do they need to sell gold to raise money? I mean, they've got a current account surplus. That means that they take in more money than they spend or than flows out of the country, right?
Right.
That means their imports and capital flow into the country exceeds their exports. The money that they take in from exports exceeds the money that leaves from them buying imports. Plus, capital is net capital. There's a positive net flow of capital into the country. So more money is flowing in than leaves, right? That's what a current account surplus means, right?
Right.
It basically means, okay, the Russian economy is cash flow positive.
So they're not broke.
Maybe it went cash flow negative over the last couple months. It probably did with the price of oil, but they still have that surplus, and they've been paying down debt. I forget the numbers, but I just saw an article the other day that talked about how they paid down a lot of their government debt. Plus, they just sold 10 billion of U.S. Treasuries in October. Plus, they just spent money buying 150 tons of gold over the previous 3 months.
Yes.
So why would they buy gold, 150 tons of gold, if they thought that they were going to have to turn right around and sell it?
At a loss.
Be forced to sell it at a loss, and so that they could raise money. I don't know that they necessarily needed to raise the money. I mean, you know how long it's been since the U.S. has had a current account surplus? The late 80s.
Good Lord.
That means the U.S. has been functioning at a negative cash flow for at least the last 25 years. We don't even know what a current account surplus feels like. It's been so long in this country. That's why the debt goes up every day in this country. I mean, that's the illusion. That's the lie that we're being told in this country. Hey, everything's great. Oh, you know what? Debt jumped up $1 trillion last year, but we only had a spending deficit of $600 billion. And everyone just gobbles it up because they would hear the report on CNN or CNBC or Fox News or their local news. Oh, Obama announced today that the government spending deficit narrowed from $1 trillion to $600 billion. But they leave out the part where we can't figure out, though, why the amount of debt outstanding jumped from 17 trillion to 18 trillion in the same period. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People buy it. They just buy it up. Oh, great. We're losing money at a slower rate than we were last year. Okay, well, we had to borrow a hell of a lot more. Explain that, please. See, they don't get that piece of information.
Yeah, and a lie by omission is still a lie.
To circle back to the Russian thing, I suppose it's possible Russia might have been selling gold, but there's too many footprints in the snow that lead me to believe that Russia's not selling gold.
No, and as a matter of fact, there was an article, and I'll look it up, and that they are actually selling oil for gold. There was an article out just this morning.
Here's the thing about the ruble, and I think that a big part of this plunge in the ruble is the U.S. attacking the ruble. It's financial warfare.
Yes,
it's part of the currency wars. All right. And I think what they're trying to do is it's no secret that it's no secret that Russia's been more vocal about it than China has been. China hasn't really been vocal about it, but they're basically trying to get away from the dollar slowly and methodically. And Russia's been very vocal about the fact that that's what they're doing. I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence that the real attack on the ruble came right after Putin announced that they were going to start testing their alternative to the SWIFT system. Because here's the thing: if Russia can roll out an alternative, the SWIFT system is essentially the nerve center of the petrodollar. All right, it's the heart, it's the circulation system, it's the nerve center. All right, and if Russia introduces an alternative, it's going to severely damage the nerve and circulatory system of the petrodollar. And if you notice, like literally right after that announcement came, maybe a few days, that's when the ruble really started to crack. And I would bet everything I have that it was the U.S. who was attacking the ruble. I mean, they've attacked every other currency, and we know they've done that. I mean, read Diary of an Economic Hitman, right?
There you go.
I mean, they've been doing it since the 70s. It was actually Milton Friedman. It's seated in Milton Friedman's philosophies. Everyone thinks Milton Friedman's this great monetarist. Well, he was brilliant, but he was also, one. If Einstein was the brainchild behind the theory of relativity, Milton Friedman was the brainchild behind using currency as a weapon and creating chaos. It was his chaos theories that were embraced by Henry Kissinger and the real brain trust behind the White House, in the late 60s and the 70s, and that's when we started saying, hey, this is great, man. We can just take our fiat currency and use it as bombs. We don't need nuclear weapons. Let's just bomb their currency and go in and put our leader in, and we control the country.
Jesus. Yeah, well, that's exactly what's been happening.
Right, and I think that's what they're trying to do with Russia now.
Well,
and maybe not necessarily go in and control it, but I think they're trying to do something to get rid of Putin, and then maybe they'll deal with China. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think this ultimately, like you said, World War II was seeded in an economic collapse. Right.
Right.
I think right now, the seeds have been sown for World War III.
Thank you for watching and listening. And part 2 will be released within 24 hours. Thank you very much.